Well, that sucked. Well, let's see. What else can I watch? Okay, let's see. Ah, there we go. Man. This movie's a classic. Oh man, Godzilla. Where to begin with a film franchise that through the last 60 years has had over 30 movies? Well, considering you read the title of this video, it should be pretty clear. So let's go back, all the way back, to 1954, where Toho, a relatively well-known film company in Tokyo, was originally planning to release a movie by the name of The Shadow of Glory, a Japanese-Indonesian co-production about the aftermath of the Japanese occupation of Indonesia. However, anti-Japanese sentiment in Indonesia forced political pressure on the government to deny visas for the Japanese filmmakers. Producer Tomoyuki Tanaka flew to Indonesia to renegotiate with the Indonesian government, but was unsuccessful. On the flight back to Japan, he conceived the idea for a giant monster film inspired by the 1953 film The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, and the Daiko Fakiri Maru incident, in which a Japanese fishing boat with a crew of 23 men was exposed to and contaminated by nuclear fallout from the US that remained after the thermonuclear device test in Bikini Atoll that happened March of that year. Soon after, writing began on a movie titled Project G. After the project was greenlit by Toho, they started on the design of the monster, modeling after elements of a Tyrannosaurus, Iguanodon, and dorsal fins of a Stegosaurus. Despite wanting to have utilized stop-motion animation, they had to settle on suitmation, as, based on the then current staff, it would take up to 7 years to finish. Finally, on November 3rd, 1954, Godzilla was released in Japan and became a box office smash, being the 8th most attended film in Japan that year. But after 60 years, does it still hold up? Well, let's get right into it and find out. Wait a second. You mean I have to read? What the hell? Couldn't they just dub it? Because as we all know, American dubs of Japanese properties are always of the highest quality. So we finally get our first scene in the movie in which a boat is exposed to a flash of light and instantly explodes, which is an obvious parallel to the Daigo Fakiri Maru incident. The next morning, Hideto Ogado, played by Akira Takadada, receives a phone call. Being a salvage expert, the Coast Guard wants him to report immediately as a result of the sinking. We also meet his girlfriend, Emiko, played by Momoko Kochi. Later, a situation room is set up to investigate the sinking of the Eiko Maru. They send another boat to investigate, but it follows the same fate as its predecessor. Wait. They survived the explosion? Seriously, that's as credible as a weeaboo saying they're Japanese.
Open it, bam! Then be super careful and don't touch the transparent slimy thing called egg white.
What? Man, Black Friday really hasn't changed since the 50s, eh? On Odo Island, the port of the missing fishing boat, inhabitants are scanning the sea, looking for signs of the boat. Truly, a beautiful performance. I wrapped this scene with one of the crew members of the ship, who claims a monster did it. The next day, the fishing boat returns with nothing, and an old guy from the village says Godzilla is doing it. But instead of listening to him, the others laugh it off. We cut to later that night, where we see the villagers having some sort of ceremony. Hey look, it's Richard Nixon. Oh no, not Shinkishi. You know, say what you will about the rest of the film, but this movie's actually pretty well shot. Well, for the most part. After the disaster that happened that night, the mayor and the eyewitnesses uncovered the fact that the destruction of the houses was unusual and not caused by a storm. And we also get a cameo from an older Kenny from Gamera. Kenny! The next day, we see Amiko going back to the island. Oh, nothing much. Just get killed by a 200 feet tall dinosaur. But, that's about it. And well, there he is. For the first time in cinematic history, we have to see our first glimpse at the king of monsters himself, Godzilla. And I can say without a doubt that this is one of the best introductions to a monster in any movie. It's just so grand, both literally and figuratively. Once you hear that roar, you know something's gonna go down. The morning after, we see a conference being held discussing Godzilla's origins and how he'll affect us.
ただいまの山根博士の報告は誠に重大でありまして、軽々しく公表すべきでないと思います。何を言うか、重大だからこそ公表すべきだ。そうだそうだそうだそうだ。黙れ。というのは、あのゴジラなる代物が水爆の実験が生んだ落とし子であるなどという。その通りじゃないか。そうだ。そんなことを発表したら、ただでさえうるさい国際問題が一体どうなるか。事実は事実だ。だからこそ重大問題である。軽率に公表した暁は、国民大衆を恐怖に陥れ、ひいて政治、経済、外交まで混乱を引き起こし、バカ者、何を言うとるか。バカとはなんてバカだよ。最初の最初。事実は堂々と発表しろ。
Man, this is worse than those pranks in the hood videos.
Yo, man. Yo, those shoes are sick. Where'd you get them? The shoes.
Good luck.
Oh, you mind if I like step on them?
No.
No?
No.
Not just one step, man. Yo!
It was a joke! It was a joke! It was a joke! Ah!
Later that evening, a bunch of people go on a cruise. Because what better place to go after a giant prehistoric monster rises from the sea than a cruise ship? What a shock. Although, rather than attacking the boat, Godzilla heads to shore. So then we're introduced to Dr. Serizawa, aka an edgy character from a high school anime, who is rumored to have a device that can kill Godzilla. After a reporter leaves his room, he reveals that he is in fact working on something to Amiko, who is a friend of his. Although, Serizawa tells her to keep it a secret, as he is afraid of what the government might do with it, which is yet another parallel to real-life events. And you know, I think the social commentary in this film is actually pretty solid. If you came in not knowing that the film was inspired by real-life events having to do with nuclear waste and bombs, it actually doesn't come off as preachy or pretentious. It's actually pretty subtle. Well, except at the ending, where they literally give you a monologue and shove it down your throat, but we'll get to that later. As night falls, Godzilla starts attacking the city. Needless to say, destruction ensues. And I have to say, for the most part, these miniatures and set used for the scenes look great even today. And even though I should feel sad about how hundreds of people died during these attacks, I don't know why, but it's pretty amusing to watch. After the attack, the military get ready to strike back at Godzilla. Also, I don't know if I've already mentioned it, but the theme for this film is pretty awesome. We then cut to Ogato preparing to propose to Amiko, but quite frankly, I don't really care about this particular subplot.
いいですね。
Well, still better editing than Mouse the Hands of Faith? At night, Godzilla finally arrives at shore, and even though they try, the military still can't defeat him. Man, that's to say that's my pop culture references. Even though the review has been pretty lighthearted until now, you might be noticing that this film has a much more serious tone than other Godzilla movies. It's pretty depressing and dreadful, really, but in a good way, if that makes any sense. Especially that course part near the end of the third act. It's actually quite sad and powerful. Anyways, Miko can't take it any longer and tells Ogado the device that could destroy the monster once and for all. After negotiating with Serizawa, he agrees to use the device on Godzilla. They get on a boat and go in the ocean until they find him and they attach the bomb. But Serizawa insists on staying on the ocean and sacrifices himself. Although in retrospect, it's kinda dumb. I mean, he could have just gone up and it would have made no difference. Anyways, Grandpa over here gives us a forced message about nuclear fallouts. Yeah, tell that to the 30 plus sequels, reboots, and spin-offs. Well, that was Yoshida Honda's Gojira. And, does it still hold up? Well, it really depends on what you mean. There are a lot of dated effects in the movie and some weird edits. In that sense, no, it does not hold up. However, in its message and entertainment value, I would say yes. Granted, as I've already showcased many times in this review, the movie isn't flawless. Far from it. There's some issues with the writing, and it can sometimes be unintentionally corny. There's still a lot of greatness to be found in Godzilla. The characters, while somewhat bland and generic, do a decent job holding up the plot. The destruction sequences are a ton of fun. Some of the effects look pretty neat, and still carries a message that still applies to this day. While I can't guarantee that you'll enjoy the movie, as I don't think it's for everyone, I do think it is an important one and worth checking out by any film enthusiast, and, in my opinion, a classic of Japanese cinema. Well, this has been the Review Theater, and I'll see you next time.